can speak to the Israeli government spokesman, Eylon Levy. Welcome to the programme, Mr. Levy. Thank you for being with us tonight. Is this a good deal?
Look, releasing terrorists is always a very difficult decision, but we're in a very difficult situation. Hamas is holding 240 hostages, including over 30 children. They've been held incommunicado for nearly 50 days by the terrorists who burned, beheaded, butchered, tortured, mutilated, massacred, raped their way through these people's communities on October 7th. We're fearful for their safety. We have an obligation as a country to bring them home safely. In the last month, we've been putting unrelenting military pressure on Hamas to agree to release these hostages. And now we have a framework to do exactly that. And we're looking forward to seeing them home and then continuing until we bring them all home. There will be no one left behind.
There was a legal challenge at the High Court today to try and stop this. Is that why the three ministers, the Prime Minister Netanyahu, came on the television tonight to explain to the Israeli public why they'd taken this decision?
This is obviously a very difficult decision. Minister Benny Gantz said this was one of the most difficult decisions that he has had to make. But we're dealing with a horrific situation of over 30 children, 30 among 240 hostages, who are being held by the terrorists who perpetrated that horrific massacre on October 7th. And we have an obligation to bring them home. This war that we are fighting now in response to the October 7th massacre has two main goals. The first is to totally destroy Hamas's governing and terrorist and military capabilities in the Gaza Strip so it can never attack our people again. And the second is to bring the hostages home. Now, there is a process of judicial review. We are talking about releasing prisoners who have been convicted of security offenses, including people who convicted of stabbing and shooting attacks against police officers and civilians, and the families of those victims have a right to appeal. But we believe this is the right and necessary step.
You've rounded quite a lot up in the last few weeks. Is that, I know there has been tension in the West Bank, but were you preparing for a swap? Have you rounded more up so that you have more to swap? Because there's a lot of young people in this as well.
And there are young people who have been convicted of attempted murder. There are people on that list who literally have blood on their hands. They didn't manage to commit murder, but they stabbed innocent people in Jerusalem and around the country. Now, we've been trying to stop this conflict from escalating in recent weeks. What Hamas was hoping to do with the October 7th massacre was to drag Palestinians into the West Bank into an escalation as well. It put out
and you think that can be avoided?
We're very much hoping to contain it.
Listen,
we're hoping to stop the conflict spreading to Lebanon and other places as well. We're focusing on the Gaza Strip and the monsters who did the October 7th massacre.
Sorry to hurry you, but we are pressed for time, but I want to get through a few things. I want to show our viewers some video that has been released tonight. I need to make this clear that this is from Reuters, who were on an embed with the IDF. The footage was reviewed by the Israeli army as part of the conditions of that embed, but these are the pictures from beneath the Al-Shifa hospital. And so we've seen tunnels already. Perhaps, Mr. Levy, you could talk us through what we're seeing as we look at these pictures.
Well, this is really extraordinary. You know, for a month, Israel has been saying that Hamas built a command center underneath the Shifa hospital. Media didn't want to believe it. International agencies didn't want to believe it, that Hamas could be using hospitals as human shields. We moved in and we're revealing that evidence. A 10-meter-long tunnel shaft leading to a 55-meter-long tunnel, a blast door. We're through that blast door, and now we're showing a whole network of tunnels underneath that hospital that Hamas was using as a command center. That is, of course, a crime against humanity. Hospitals must be protected under international law. They cannot be used under international humanitarian law for military purposes. But Hamas's whole strategy is based on using human shields to try to escape Israeli reprisals for its attacks against our people.
Do these tunnels arrive in the hospital? Because obviously there are a lot of doctors who have told us on air that they had no idea that there was a command centre. They didn't believe there was a command centre. Could they have been right? Is it fair that both sides were right, that you were saying that it was there and that they didn't know it was there because it wasn't visible to people working in the hospital?
First of all, this was Gaza's biggest open secret, and in previous rounds of conflict, it was reported on that Hamas was using the Shifa hospital as a command center. But I'll tell you something about the doctors. On October 7th, Hamas abducted hostages and dragged them into the Shifa hospital. We have declassified the CCTV footage of men with meat cleavers and guns abducting people into the hospital in plain view of the doctors, who then stick around and chat with the Hamas terrorists. So people knew, and the doctors who have been interviewed by the media and denying it, I don't know whether they are simply cowed by Hamas or collaborators, but they've been complicit through their silence with the abuse of that hospital.
I don't dispute that there is an enormous tunnel network beneath Gaza. The question which the UN and international human rights agencies ask is whether it's proportional, whether the collateral damage, and it has been huge, come on, it has been huge, whether that was proportional to the attempts to get at this tunnel network beneath the hospital. Your response to that?
Under international law, proportionality means that with each particular strike, the collateral damage cannot be disproportionate to the expected military advantage. And the expected military advantage here is to destroy the terror organization that perpetrated the deadliest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, the deadliest terror attack in world history since 9/11, retreated into the Gaza Strip with 240 hostages and told us that it wants to do it again and again and again. So we're doing everything that we can under international law to try to get civilians out of harm's way. That's why we spent so long urging people to evacuate the areas where Hamas has built its tunnels under schools, hospitals, mosques and homes, because we don't want them to be hurt. But we're going to destroy the terror organization that perpetrated that horrific massacre that shocked the world and proudly says it wants to do it again and again until it murders every man, woman, child in this country.
We've heard reports from people we've had on the programme this week who suggested that maybe Hamas doesn't have control of all the hostages. There are other groups in Gaza that might have some of these hostages. What's not been talked about so widely today is that this deal that Prime Minister Netanyahu secured through the Qataris guarantees Red Cross access. So the ICRC should be able to go in and see the other hostages to see how they are and report back. How important is that to families back in Israel?
That's hugely important. We're talking about hostages, including children, who have not had any medical attention. Their families know nothing about them. Hamas has been holding them in dark tunnels, and it's been keeping their families in the dark. We know there were people who were taken into the Gaza Strip with horrific injuries, with whole limbs that had been blown off during the October 7th massacre, and we don't know their condition. Hamas has been psychologically torturing these people's families by not letting them know anything about their relatives' conditions. And we hope that Hamas will keep its side of the bargain. We don't expect it to be operating out of morality or develop a conscience. This is because we've put serious military pressure on it. And to grant Red Cross access to all the hostages, that is the most basic humanitarian mercy that anyone can ask for.
Eylon Levy, thank you very much for your thoughts this evening.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your time on the programme. We will continue, of course, to watch events in the Middle East.